Richard, it's a pleasure to have you here on the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's an absolute pleasure, and thank you for agreeing to have me on.
Yeah, I mean, we met each other a month or two ago back when I was a guest on your podcast, had a great chat and said, we've got to do this again.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I think, it feels like yesterday, but I think it was like episode 65 on my podcast. So it's about 3 or 4 months ago now. How time flies.
It sure does, and it's great to see you again. And I'm excited about our conversation today, Richard, all around sort of how to grow an agency and how to grow a business. It all sort of linked in together. And some of the stuff we chatted about just before, just some really interesting stuff and good conversation today. So I'll turn it over to you, Richard. If I was just to say it, put it out there with that one question. What are some of the key things in growing an agency that you've learned and that you work with
Yeah.
through your business?
So I think, like a lot of businesses and a lot of different industries, there's a lot of things out there that you can focus on to sell, and offer. And there's a lot of things you can do on a day-to-day basis. So I think, firstly, my biggest takeaway, I think I've run a business. I mean, I think technically I've never actually had a job other than when I was about 14 and worked in a supermarket. But after that, obviously school, university, left university, it was like, okay. My father had always worked for himself, and it was almost drummed into me, but not literally, but, it was like just a given really that I would work for myself, and I always have. And I think some of the biggest takeaways for me would be, focusing on the things that matter on a day-to-day basis, and I think that is transferable, obviously, in agency life, but any business. I've had a couple of businesses over the years, really, two main ones. One was importing computers and computer components and selling them. And the other one is the agency that we are now, we're chatting about, which we're coming up to our 12th birthday.
Wow, good for
and
you.
The things really, I think a couple of things really with that. I think in agency, you can sell a lot of different things. So you can sell email marketing, web design, websites, hosting, SEO, PPC, Facebook, and so on and so on. But if we're honest, anybody listening to this is honest, there's certain things that no doubt they do well and they're better at than other things. And that's definitely the case for us. We started as a pure SEO agency, but over the years, have to admit, we tried different things, but when it comes down to it, we're very good at SEO and PPC. So for us, it was very much right. We're going to focus on these four actual areas that are all around SEO and PPC. And bottom line is, forget about the rest. Work with professionals, work with experts that are potential partners. That also opens other revenue streams because you've got like a referral partner aspect to it, and focus really hard and deep on the areas that you're strong at. And that sort of revelation, if you like, many years ago has really stood us strong. So, we very much focus on the core areas. So when you get a prospect that is talking to you, it's almost like, oh God, where have you been all this time, to us as a business. So it's all about, and it very much is, when you speak to somebody that's, they're an e-commerce for us, they're an e-commerce store, they're doing X amount of revenue, they're doing a few £1,000,000 a year, a few $1 million a year, they've maybe hit a ceiling with their ads, they maybe having some challenges with their SEO. And then we say, right, okay, and then we talk through, what we offer, what we do, sort of obviously 12 years into it now, it's just a real good fit. So I would say, absolute big bit of advice would be to find that thing that you're really good at, that you've got those testimonials, that deep knowledge, and you've got a genuine interest in it. Obviously, I think that's key. I think a lot of people end up doing things because maybe financial. I think you do have to enjoy it,
For sure.
And ultimately get a good damn result for the client. So in those areas, focusing on the services, depending on what type of business you've got, whoever's listening in, the areas, because we all know there's a million. We read that next book, we get that next idea, and we're off to, well, we're now going to do this and we're now going to do that. So I think really hone in the service that you have. And then I think sort of building frameworks around it, your own framework, terminology, even technology, tech stack around it. So for us, with our SEO, we have what we call our SEO recipe, and that everything stands for an element of SEO. We've built a whole framework around it, our PPC framework. So we're thinking about, if you're listening in your business, building a framework around your service you're offering, and then you've got different expertise, breaking them down, and you just stand out from the crowd, and it's relatively straightforward to do. Whereas I just think people just become almost busy fools doing so many different things that maybe they're not great at, if they're honest. So really putting a focus into key areas. But then I think also it's then, I think one of the big things is just being super organized with your time and doing the right things. So now, right, this is the services that we're going to be doing, but on a day-to-day basis, just having real structure to those days, and you're doing the right things. Now, I think you've talked about this quite a few times on quite a few other episodes, but I think it's just so key that when you get up in the morning, you know what you've got to do. And I think, so many business people now, they still, rock up in the morning. It's like, oh, I've got some, I need to be doing that, I need to be doing that. But we know that there's some tasks over here that are the ones that are really going to move the needle, whether that's recruiting that next senior person in the business, which means that then the team have got somebody to rely on that takes the pressure off you because you're managing too much stuff. Or whether that's, quite often business development, sales side of the business, the financial side of things. So just really making sure you're doing the right things at the right time, you're doing these maybe $1,000 an hour tasks, I think. And obviously that'll be different for different people that are listening.
Yeah, I love that. And I mean, like we've talked about in the past about, I have this 4P framework, and, that first one's getting the product right, right? And then getting the process right and getting the people right. And when I heard you talk, I mean, we have so many things that are similar in common. I think that's why we get along well together. But from that perspective, the one thing I wanted to talk a little bit about and dig a little bit deeper there was the idea of accountability and sort of the framework. It's one thing when you build these systems and frameworks, but then there's that other sort of idea of who's going to tackle it and who's going to be accountable. Why don't you talk a little bit about that in the growth of your agency and how you've managed through accountabilities so that everything's getting done in the way that you need them done to provide the promise to your customer?
Yeah. I think it's just so easy to sort of say we're going to do this, that, and the other, and then next thing you know, it's forgotten about, let alone accountable for. So I think there's a few things we do in our agency. So I'll sort of step you through some of the day-to-day things we do. So just from we do on a Monday, Tuesday, and a Friday in our business, we do what we call a stand-up, which is we stand up in the business. We don't always stand up now because we're sort of hybrid remote, so I'll quite often be sat here. And we'll talk about the things that we've done today and the things that we did yesterday and the things that we're going to do today. So just a little 5-10 second discussion with the team or stand up saying, today I'm going to work on this, 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 and this. Then tomorrow, when I'm on that meeting, same meeting, everyone knows that I said today I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And obviously you don't want to be the guy that tomorrow says, well, actually, I didn't quite do that, and have that running through the veins of the company that, we do what we say we're going to do. That's such a key thing. I think that's, real in any business. So I think day to day, you're planning your days, and we have an open Google Calendar within the business, so everyone can see everyone's calendar. We know what everyone's working on. So if we want to, how are we getting on with such and such a project, we can just check. Oh, it's in the diary, so we can see it's in the diary. But then we obviously we use Slack in our business for communicating on all projects. But then we actually, talking of accountability, it's quite uncanny. We actually use the traction methodology, which is behind you.
Yeah, exactly.
So the EOS, the Entrepreneur's Operating System, where you break down your business into 90-day chunks, and you have what's called rocks. And so you have business rocks. Mm-hmm. So these will be big, chunky bits. Yep. And then within those rocks, you've got tasks for me, for my managers, for my different members in my team. And that's something that on a weekly basis, each department discusses those rocks, which is being accountable for the things that are the top level 90-day targets. We're just coming to the end of the quarter. So for us now, we've got, Friday, I think is the end of the month. I think that's right, or Monday. And we will finish our 90-day, and we have rocks that we've been discussing every week. Because what normally happens is you agree something today, and then maybe it's not discussed, but 90 days, you come back to it in 90 days, it's like, how'd you get on with such and such? Oh, not great, actually. Yeah. Well, if we're checking in, a little check-in most days, on Monday, Tuesday, Friday, but that's on a few things. But then in a weekly meeting, a departmental weekly meeting, you're discussing the rocks, which is making you accountable. So that's a couple of things we do. Yeah. But then over and above that, we do a few other things as well. I think we actually we invest in a business coach in the business who's worked with us now for probably coming up to 10 years. Nice. He comes in once a month physically when we can. He's back coming into the office now, and he works with our management team.
Mhm.
And each month, again, we say, right, this month we're going to focus on X, which will partly be the rocks and a few other subtasks of the rocks. And he's going to come in a month. And I don't think there's anything worse than sort of saying, no, I didn't get that done. I didn't get that done. Obviously, if you got COVID or something, that's fair enough. So accountability, I think it really should run through the veins of the company. It's such a key thing.
Yeah.
I think that reading Traction and EOS is
It's a great book.
is a great book.
We've certainly followed a lot of Gino's processes along the
Yeah.
way over the years as well. And likewise, we do the quarterly meetings and manager monthly meeting and weekly meeting. And what we've done recently for our stand-ups in our business is that we're starting to use Voxer. I don't know whether you've ever heard of Voxer or not,
Oh,
but it's like a
yes.
walkie-talkie app. And we just
Yeah.
Vox our 3 priorities, the management team every day, so that everybody on the channel knows. They just speak their 3 priorities. And at the same time, they just say, hey, I got number 1 and number 2 done from yesterday. I'm going to carry this one over to today. And here's my 3 priorities for today. So we're all just spending, 2 seconds or 3 seconds, kind of speaking into our phones on Voxer. Everybody gets the message. Everybody knows where we are for our 3 prime priorities. We call them prime priorities for the 3 prime priorities of the day on our management team. And then they have their stand-ups within their teams. So we've just converted that really in the last month or so to going to a Voxer-based one.
I like that. I like that a lot. I think that obviously gives you a bit more of your time back as well each day, which is great.
Yeah, and people, because it's asynchronous, people can, if somebody starts their morning at 7:30 and somebody starts their morning at 8, you don't all have to be there exactly at the right time, but at the same time, everybody's picking up the message, hearing everybody else's and inputting theirs, and also recapping what the 3 were yesterday. So from that perspective, it's like, okay, I did hit this, this, and this, or I got all 3 yesterday, or I got 2 yesterday, or I got 1 yesterday because something sidetracked us and we had to take care of that. Then we have our weekly meeting. That's a gathering, and then we do monthlies now instead of quarterlies. We were doing quarterlies, like you had mentioned, but we're doing half-day monthlies now, so that we're in a better rhythm than holding it all out to a full-day quarterly.
Yeah, and then we will also do I think obviously if you're building a business and you're sort of 10, 20, 30 plus, I think obviously getting that management structure in place,
for sure,
getting those key hires. And I think then obviously it's not just about getting those key hires, it's obviously retaining those people and making sure they're buying. So obviously making sure they're part of the vision piece, making sure they're very aware of the plan and how what their part plays or can play in the plan. They can see their growth in the business, because I think especially in the digital world we're in, it's a lot more transient than 10 years ago. It's easier to move jobs, and obviously that doesn't really help anybody. Well, I think as a business owner, somebody that if you're hiring somebody, obviously you want them to stay. If you're sharing that vision with them,
for sure,
and sharing what the plans are, and obviously within that vision, they'll see growth in an area that hopefully they want to be part of, or growth in a department that they can be part of. So I think sharing that vision is really important. And then I think also individual appraisals with the individuals, so an appraisal process with all individuals. Obviously, depending on the size of your business, whoever's listening, you may not, as a business owner, be able to do them all. If you've got 50 people, that's very tricky.
Exactly.
But obviously, your manager's management. We have a tiered system here, and I do actually sit in all appraisals, and then different managers sit, and it's a huge process. But the difference I see doing it, is incredible. Spending, what is about an hour and a half with every single employee every 3 months. It takes a few days to do it.
Yeah.
But obviously, then we're really discussing them as individuals, and setting them very specific personal development tasks and investing in them, whether we're buying various courses or sending them on courses or whatever it may be. That's something that's very specific, but that can be then fed back to the company rock, which is something you're obviously you should be obsessed about. So I think individual appraisals is really key as well.
Yeah, I like that. One of the other things too that you mentioned there that ties it back to the earlier conversation of really focusing on what it is that you do, and with your pick your product and know that whatever that service is and hone down and be deep in that. It allows the person who's coming in to truly know what they're going to be responsible for and truly know if
Yeah.
that's in alignment with what they are looking to do
Yeah.
along with your culture. So it confirms and sort of confirms the fact that if they're coming in and they're, in your case, an SEO specialist, it's like, this is
Yeah.
what I truly love. I don't want to do these other things. I love
Yeah.
SEO and I love the rest of the stuff. Then that gives you that sort of longevity and confirmation
Yeah.
and all the things around that particular person that's going to come work with you and
Yeah.
build your team stronger, right?
Yeah, absolutely. When you recruiting is obviously another challenge, and if you've got a very specific offer,
Mm-hmm.
and that job title, job role, job specification is very specific, yeah, there's going to be less people to go at in theory, depending on your
Mm-hmm.
industry. But if somebody sees that job spec and that in its exact match, rather than,
Exactly.
well, you're going to be doing this, you're going to be working with these guys, you're going to be working. No, we work with these people and we do this thing. Oh, okay. It's very, very specific. Or, we can train you in that very specific area. It makes hiring a lot more. We've recently hired two in the last month, SEO specialists, and that's sort of a good example, where they've sort of found us, and it's like, they're almost obsessed to work with us, sort of thing. But obviously,
Beautiful.
it can take. You have less people to go at in theory, but when you find them, it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, and you interview them. It's then very specific skills, very specific interests. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with me. Today, Richard, going through all the ways of how you've grown your business and really have given, I think, our listeners some really good things to think about on the areas that they may need to improve on too. And, think about those takeaways that we've just talked about. Lots of great stuff here in today's episode of the Simplifying Entrepreneurship podcast. And it was just fantastic to see you again.
Thanks, Pete. I look forward to doing it all again soon.
It's been a pleasure, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.